Hello everybody, this is Lino Tadros again, and in this beginning of exercise number 2, the whole idea here is to bring our own data in one great way to enhance, of course, the GPT-4o or other models in the Azure OpenAI, allowing them to answer questions specific to our circumstances. Another way that we would like to exercise in this specific lab is to customize responses and enhance system capabilities involving function calling. In my humble opinion, function calling is the future of AI. It's probably the most powerful way of being able to use AI models for Gen AI. Something that we can implement using LangChain or semantic kernel frameworks. In this specific lab, we're going to use the Microsoft semantic kernel. It's an open source framework, great product actually to see how it works and how you can utilize it as an orchestrator as well. So in this lab or exercise, you will create a solution allowing end users to query data that's inside of an Azure SQL database using natural language. So the main objective behind this lab, the first one is to implement hotel bookings, history endpoints against the Azure SQL database using C#. And then we're going to use or create semantic kernel plugins to enable translation of natural language into SQL queries. And then finally, we're going to incorporate this API results into our dashboard application using Streamlit application in Python. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is the regular stuff that you're probably expecting to see. Like if I'm going to use Microsoft SQL Server in Azure, for instance, I need to set up my firewall rules to allow my client here from home to be able to access it. So let's go ahead and find out what is my SQL database. So I can definitely go to SQL Server. Actually, I'm going to need to go to the server itself, not the database. We go back in here, find out where the database is. SQL database. And the server. Do I need to get to it through the SQL database? Yeah, baby. There you go. Let's do that. And we close this guy's stuff down. And we'll go all the way to the top where it says set server firewall. Let's click on that. And I would like to enable my IP address right there. So I'm going to add my client. Instead of all the stuff, I'm just going to put Lino desktop or something just to make sure that this is all okay. Allow Azure servers and resources to access this service. Yes, I would like to do that as well. We'll say save. And it will take a few seconds, and now at least for my IP address. Why is this important? In case I'm going to use SQL Server Management Studio or Azure Data Studio or something, I will be able to get to it from my machine, which has a specific IP address, into Azure. Otherwise, everything is locked down to come in from the outside. So this is good enough for me that I know now my IP address from home will work. All right, this is the place probably where you would like to go ahead and open up SQL Server Management Studio. And you'll need to get in here your connection string and username and password, hopefully for SQL Server and all that. We will be able to get this stuff and being able to access it. But there is even an easier way. Also, you can use the Azure Data Studio as well, will do the job. But notice actually now when you go to the SQL database, let's say SQL database is right there, you will notice there is a Contoso Suite bookings that got created for me. It's empty, there is nothing in it, but I'm going to click on it. And you will notice on the side it says Query Editor is in preview right now. If I click on that, I don't need an outside tool to allow me to do this. I can just put in the Contoso admin. I can steal the password that I ran the bicep with, if you remember. So if I go back in here, open up my Visual Studio Code project, and what I really need to do is to open up the source, go down to infrastructure. There is my Azure resources. Somewhere, if I go on the top in here, there will be the SQL admin password. If you didn't change it, if you left it as is, this will be your password. So I'm going to say Control C this guy, and we will go back in here and we will paste that password. We'll say OK. So now without using an outside tool or a SQL Server Management Studio, I can come in here and I can actually run the code coming in from a specific SQL to be able to create all the tables, all the schema, and the foreign constraint. Where do I get that stuff from? Easy enough. This will be in a file called the bookinghistory.sql. So let me open again Visual Studio Code. And I need to go into data. There you go. There is data. And booking history SQL. So there is a lot of things in here. We're going to create a customer, a hotel room type, hotel room, booking. There's a lot of different things. Anyway, I'm going to say Control A, Control C for all of that good stuff. And I'm going to come in here. I'm going to paste it. And we have all the relationship between the tables and everything. Let me go ahead and run it. Actually, query successful, affected rows, and there is about 14 different hotels that was added. I think we're in pretty good shape and we're ready to go. So if I open up tables now, notice there is a booking hotel room, customer, hotel room. So it did work, and now at least I have something to play around with inside of my Azure SQL database. All right, the next piece is very important. Bear with me here. What I would like to do right now, let me close this guy down. I'm going to open up a terminal. And what I'd like to do in the terminal, I would like to set an environment variable. And that's specifically for the SQL Azure connection string for Contoso Suite. So if I come in here and I'm going to do something like this, $environment, env, and then I'm going to be passing the SQL Azure connection string underscore Contoso Suite, and I'm going to give it the server name, all the information about the name of the database. The username is Contoso admin. The password I need to again copy and paste it again from my bicep one more time. Important thing is to encrypt has to be true, and the trust server certificate also has to be true. So I'm going to change this guy to say true in here. So let me go ahead and delete this last character, and I'm going to be moving to trust this guy by saying true in here. That's 1, and then I'm going to be moving also to the password. Let me go ahead and delete this placeholder for the password. Let's go back in here. Where did we leave this guy? It is going to be in the bicep. Alrighty, it will be the infrastructure one, and in here we'll double click. Oh, let me go ahead and grab this guy, Control C this, and I'm going to come in here and put the password right there. All right, there's one more I think, and that is the server itself. So I'm going to come in here and we will delete this guy, and I just need to steal the database name. Let me go ahead and get that also from here. Oh no, not the GitHub, I need this one, and we'll go to the overview and we'll say okay, that's already been created. I need this portion, so I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm gonna go to Visual Studio Code and I am gonna go in here, paste it in here, just because I want the first piece only, this guy. .database, okay, so all of this. Say Control C, and now I'm gonna go right before this word .database and I'll put it right there. Okay, now I can delete this from here before I cause a mess in my code. All right, so if I take a look now at my environment that I'm actually setting it up, it will go against the name of the database with the port number. The name I know for the database is called the Contoso Suite Bookings, username and password, and everything should be in good shape in here. So I'm going to go back and let me also go to the end of this, and we'll push enter, and it's done. The one thing that a lot of people actually get a problem with is that now you can continue on expecting this environment to be available. And as a matter of fact, this will not be available everywhere, unfortunately. So be careful. Once you do something like this, you have to shut down not only this instance of Visual Studio Code, every single instance of Visual Studio Code is running on your machine. They all have to go away. So I'm going to close this guy down and I'm going to have to start it. That's the only way you can make sure that the environment variable you just created will be picked up by everybody. So this is a very, very important piece that you need to do. Sounds good? All right, let's keep going. And I'm going to go ahead and peek at my Contoso Suites web API, the C# based API. I just wanted you to know that there is a folder called services that have some important files that we will actually get to later on in other labs where we can actually make some more changes in the future. But remember here, there is a database service and a vectorization service that have interfaces that have some functionality that will have to be implemented. So in the iDatabase service, you will notice the get hotels, get booking for hotel, get bookings by hotel, and minimum date to start with. All of these are available in here. And if you take a look at the database service, there is the implementation of how it's going to go get that from the database automatically. So I need to call into these services using my API. Again, so let's go ahead and implement it. I'm going to open up the program.cs. And you will notice in the program.cs there is a lot of placeholders in here. Okay, so if I go down until it starts actually making calls into the endpoint, so there will be an app.map get to the slash. This is the starting point at the local host of the API itself. For instance, if you're running this on localhost, or even when we deploy it to Azure, that is something without any routes at all, just the slash. It will tell you welcome to the Contoso Suites web API. If I say slash hotels, notice it says throw new implementation. So I need to change all this throw new not implemented exception to be able to tell the system how to go get that from the database now that I've actually created the database itself. So the first one, let's do this with the hotels. So I'm going to go ahead and copy two lines of code instead of this one. I'm going to use my services to say var hotels, and I'm going to go ahead and do an await for this async for the slash hotels to use the app services get required services database service, and then call the get hotels that has been implemented in the service that I just showed you a minute ago. And then I will return all the hotels. So if there is 4, 5, 6 hotels, the slash hotels in here will return the collection of all the different hotels available in there. What happens if I would like to find the bookings of a specific hotel, like hotel 1, hotel 2, based on their IT? How do I do something like that? So let me go ahead also and copy 2 lines of code. Instead of throwing an exception, I will come in here and we'll do the same thing. I am going to be calling into the app services, get required service, the database service, and I'm going to be calling the get bookings for hotel, passing in the hotel ID, and that will end up getting us the collection of the bookings, and it will return it as well. So it's hopefully pretty simple to understand what we are trying to do in here. The final one that I will tackle on this one is that if I want to see the bookings for a specific hotel starting from a specific date, for instance. So I'm going to come in here, remove the exception, and I'm going to say var bookings. Same thing using the database service. I'm going to say get bookings by hotel and minimum date, passing not only the hotel ID, but the minimum date that it needs to start with to do that as well. And then I'll return the collection of all the bookings starting that date. So hopefully that makes sense. I just added the 3 implementation for my APIs for slash hotels, hotel ID, and bookings for the minimum date, and the slash hotel ID, and all the bookings if you would like to as well. Excellent. I'm ready to run this, but remember there are 2 things that will be running right now. There is my API, which is C# based, and there is the Python app, which is the dashboard. So obviously that means that I need to have 2 different PowerShell running, or a bash, or whatever you'd like, but one of them has to be running the API locally on my machine, and the other one has to run the Python code for the dashboard. You cannot just run one without the other. So let's go ahead and first of all in here, and I'm going to go into the source. Let's go ahead and do that, and I'm going to move to the Contoso web API. There you go. So if I'm inside of the folder for the API, I know that this is a C# application. What do I need to do? First of all, there are a lot of different NuGet packages that need to be restored. So the first thing we're going to do is a .NET, and we'll say restore. And we'll run this, and we will wait here patiently until it says, oh, all projects are up to date, no restore needed. Great. Now I can say .NET build, just to build the entire application in C#. We'll give it a second in here to do this. And hopefully it will come back and it will say, okay, there is some warnings, but everything was successful as well. And let's go ahead and say .NET run. And now we're going to go ahead and run it. It will choose, of course, whatever port number I gave it. Notice it's running at localhost 5292. Let me grab this guy from here. And I'm going to start actually a new instance. Let me go ahead and open up Chrome, for instance, in here really quickly. You can do it with any browser. And I'm going to go against the localhost 5292 and see if this is working. This is the equivalent of slash, right? And that's one of my map of the routes will say welcome to the Contoso Suite web API. If I want to test this with slash hotels, for instance, it should actually call my function correctly, and it should come back, oh, there is an exception. Let's see what it says, not implemented exception. Why do you think that happened? I know what happened. I bet you there will be a 1 next to that. You see that 1? That means I made all my changes, but I did not save. If that happens to you, you know you messed up like I did. So I'm going to say Control S to save this, and then we'll do a Control C one more time to close it. And I need to do a .NET build one more time to make sure that it built correctly. Sometimes I leave these mistakes because it happens to others as well. So .NET run. Alrighty, it will run at localhost 5290. Okay, sounds good. Let's go, where is my, let me bring it up again in here, and I'll say, let's go to 5292, and then we'll say slash hotels. All right. Oh, another problem, the connection string property has not been initialized. That's another problem for the iDatabase service that we have to be careful about as well. Let's go ahead and fix that as well. Oh yes, I know what went wrong on this one. Let me go ahead back to Visual Studio Code. The fact is that we are running in one of these two PowerShells in here, and my environment variable is not included in the new one. So I need to stop this from running. And we'll do a CLS so you can see it. I need to paste that line. Remember that the environment for the SQL Azure connection string, I'm going to use my password correctly. I'm going to change the encrypt and the test server certificate equal to true as well. And I changed, of course, the name of my server as well. So let's go ahead and enter this guy. All right, we're good. And now from inside of this Contoso web API, we'll say .NET run. All right, let's go ahead and do it one more time. We're still running on 5292. Let me go ahead and give it another shot in here. And there we go. This time it's working. All right, so that is 4 different hotels, 1, 2, 3, and 4, with their name, the city, the country. I'm using a specific Chrome extension to show me JSON instead of a weird looking stuff, but hopefully that will make it easy to understand the array of the 4 objects that came back in the JSON as well. So it's obviously working, which is great. All right, so now I want to find out if I can have access to that using the API directly from the Python application, my dashboard. So let me close this guy down. Go back to Visual Studio Code. The important thing is that you cannot stop running this. Okay, if you stop the API, of course, the dashboard is not going to work. So I need to leave it alone and go to another PowerShell in here. And this one will say CD, where am I? I'm in the, okay, so we'll say source, and we'll say CD Contoso dashboard. Yep, this one. And I need to do the same thing I did before, which is Python, Python, no. And one of these guys will get me what I want. Okay, no. All right, sounds good. We'll say Python -m, and we'll say stream lit, and we'll run the index.py. There it is. So we run this. So now both of them are running in 2 different PowerShell. And notice now the localhost 8501 is running locally. Everything is running locally. We did not go to Azure yet. And to make sure that this is working, if I go to the second one, the page number 2, which is API integration, if I click on that, notice that this combo box is actually using the code we just deployed. So if I go in here, bring it down, these are the 4 hotels that came back in the JSON and the user interface is using. If this was an error or I could not see anything, something is wrong locally. So definitely it's working, so I can see all the different hotels available. So the whole idea behind this one is this combo box right there. If I see 4 in here, we're good. That means this is working locally at least. So the only thing left is for me to deploy all of that, the API and the dashboard, to Azure and make sure this still continues to work with no problem. Let's do that. The first thing I need to do, folks, because I have a couple of things that I made a change to, the program.cs. And what did I change in this one? Oh, no problem. I'm going to go ahead and just discard this change. I don't need to put an empty line here or anything. I think we're good. The only thing I changed is the program.cs with the implementation of the 3 different functions, which is great. I'm going to come in here and we'll say API integration, and then we'll say commit and push, all that stuff. And while it's doing that, I need to go back to my portal and I need to find out where is my API, this one. See, not the dashboard, the API one. And I would like to include some connection string in here. So if you go on the settings, environment variables right there, and we will see there is some of the things in here. In a future lab, we will add to those as well. But for right now, I just need the connection string. Let me click on connection string in there. And I'm going to click on add. And in here, we'll be able to set up the name. So the name, we'll call it, for instance, Contoso Suites. Okay, so we'll say Contoso Suites. Alrighty, and then the value will be, you can copy and paste that directly from the environment that we created earlier. So I'm going to paste that line as is, and that line looks like this: server equals, and it will have the name of the server with the port number, the catalog name, and it would have the username and password and the timeout and everything. Same exact thing that you saw before. Finally, the type, this is a SQL Azure, so we're going to go ahead and see a SQL Azure in here. And we don't care about the deployment slot for right now. I'm going to say apply. All right, so now the good news is the API has its own connection string, so it's not counting on my own environment that I did locally. So this $ environment for the connection string, that's only locally on my machine. I need something equivalent to that with the same name Contoso Suites available in Azure for the API to work as well. Does that make sense? All right, now that all the stuff has been deployed, let me go back to home and we'll say, oh, let me say cancel, make sure that we apply this, confirm, yes. If you don't do the apply, a lot of people forget it because it's way down here. You would think it's done. It's not until you click apply, it will not take it. So don't move away from that. Otherwise the Contoso Suite connection string has not taken place, and I can see the value of it in here as well. All right, let me go back to the home page. We'll go to the resource group. We'll open up our resource group. And I'm going to go to the dashboard one now. There it is. This is the one. And I would like to see if the API integration will still work. I'm going to click on that. And before I do that, by the way, I want to make sure that the deployment took place already. Otherwise, I'm doing it too early. So let me open up this guy. And we will say refresh this page and see if something took place. Yeah, 2 minutes ago. And the API integration took place. I didn't make any changes for the dashboard. The dashboard did not need to be redeployed because my only change was in the program.cs. So you see it's smart enough, of course, that it only did the API deployment 2 minutes ago, but it did not do the dashboard, and that's totally okay with me. All right, let's go back now on Azure and say API integration. Select the hotel. It's running get hotels. It's making a call into the API, and I'm hoping that it will work with no problems. Let's wait for it. This is the first time it's running. Notice at the top in here. And if it's successful, it gives me an error. I'm glad that error occurred, as a matter of fact. And the reason sometimes you get this with the function with all these arrows next to it is because there is a time it will take for the swapping of the image from the Docker image itself. So whenever you see something like this, go back in here and go to the API. Let's see where the API is. Open up the API. There you go. And one of the things that I really recommend for you is to restart the system to make sure that new version coming in from the Docker is the one that is working. So we'll say restart, we'll say yes. And now be patient, give it about a minute, minute and a half to make sure that it's restarted and everything is good. And then I'm going to go back to my resource group and we will go also to the dashboard one. You don't need to do this, but I always like to start both of them just to make sure that this is not an issue of synchronization between the Docker images. So I'm going to restart this as well. Just give it a minute, and then when we come back and we run this, the dashboard, I am hoping that will not be a problem and we will be able to go to the API integration. So I didn't make any changes other than restarting the API and the dashboard. That's about it. That's normal what's happening at this point. And then you select the hotel running get hotels. And I'm expecting this time for this to work with no problem. Let's give it another second. Oh, still a problem. Let me see what I did wrong. Actually, it was a caching issue, folks. So whenever you get a problem like this, my recommendation on the keyboard, whether using Edge or Chrome or others, do a Shift F5. If you do a Shift F5, that will cause the cache to go away. And notice I didn't change anything at all, but this time it was definitely, be honest with you, Chrome is a very, very aggressive caching mechanism browser. So Shift F5 made it go away. And now I can see all my 4 hotels coming in from the /hotels call into the API is working directly in Azure. So again, it was a caching issue, nothing more than that. All right. I hope this was useful to you. I know there was a couple of errors. I didn't want to really remove them because a lot of people will get them. So at least you see how to get around them and how to fix them really quickly. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again in the completion of the lab 2 in the next one as well. Thank you.